Hey folks, welcome back. In this video, I want to talk about a relatively small project that I want to tackle, but it's a very important item to have here on the truck. And that is the RII, or the Remote Ignition Interrupter. So basically the RII is just a remote control kill switch that your track crew member or a member of your own crew can use to shut your truck off from the sidelines if there is ever any need. Say the driver becomes incapacitated or some kind of mechanical failure where the truck is taking off and the driver can't get it shut down on his own. You know, somebody from the sidelines can push a button and hopefully get that truck shut down before someone gets hurt. Now, as far as I can remember, the RII has been around since like the late 80s or the early 90s. It was actually basically created for monster truck racing. I believe it was an invention inspired by, the hazards of these big trucks and racing at the speeds and tight quarters that they were in. If I remember correctly, there was a video from a TNT monster truck race where they were talking about the killer radio box being brand new at that race. And I think that was in 1990. So needless to say, they've been around for about 35 years. Since the very beginning of this project, I always kind of had it in the back of my mind that there's a possibility that this truck could become a monster truck at some point. So I've always kind of followed the MTRA rules when designing parts of the truck, like the chassis and the cage, and tried to follow all of those safety specifics. That way, once I got to the point, if I ever did make this thing a monster truck, I would be at the head of the game at that point. So when it came time to wiring the truck, I did in fact buy an RII unit. I looked into what a lot of the other mega truck guys were running. One of the more popular units that those guys were using was made by a company called 3Built. Now, it's basically just a box that wires into your truck in between your ignition switch and your ignition module or your ignition box, CDI box, whatever you're using. And it's just like I said, it's a remote control that you push the button and it shuts the truck off. Push another button and it resets. The guy can fire the truck back up if need be. Now, I had bought this, I have it all wired in the truck, and it's done. I've never actually tested it with the engine running. I've dry tested it, sort of. I turn the key on, turn the power on. I can shut the ignition off. I can see that the unit works. But I've never actually killed the actual engine with this box. Now, here we are getting ready to make this thing into a monster truck. And I've been asked by a couple of people, do you have an RII in your truck? Well, yes, I do, as a matter of fact. It's all set up, it's ready to go. So that was good. Well, now that we're getting ready to put bigger parts in and we're getting pretty close to doing the whole deal where this thing is going to be a monster truck, I kind of got to thinking about it. I've never seen anybody in the monster truck stuff that I've been around using 3Built. So I asked a couple of people, hey, my truck is running a 3Built RII. Am I going to be able to use that? And I was told, no, you're going to have basically the same unit that they are running. And that unit is made by a company called Birch, or Birch Communications. So this is actually the box that goes in the truck. You can select what lane you're in. Once they trip it, you reset it here with this button. And it is controlled by basically just like a walkie-talkie or a communications radio. And obviously this unit is probably programmed to that unit. I doubt you're going to be able to run to Walmart and get yourself a walkie-talkie and go out there shutting monster trucks off. That would be a bad deal. So I did purchase this unit so I can get it installed in this truck. Unfortunately, this unit by Birch costs about 3 times the amount that the 3Built does. Hopefully I can sell this thing to somebody else that can actually use it and recoup a little bit of my funds. So what I'm going to do right now is gather up the camera. We'll take a peek in the truck, how I have everything set up right now, and what my plan is to get that unit out and this unit installed. So here I've got the camera set up on the floor and a little bit of light shining up under the dash. For those of you that are paying attention, yes, that's a wiper motor. Remember, mud truck. This white box right here that says 3Built on it is actually the receiver unit for this particular RII. Has two harnesses coming out of it. One going up here to this 4-pin plug, and that is your power and ground and your 2 lane lights. I'll get into the lane lights a little bit more later. The second little harness coming out of there goes to this 2-pin plug, and that 2-pin plug is basically just power coming from the ignition switch through this box and out to the ignition box. So when you push the button on the remote, that breaks continuity on that circuit, killing the engine. Now I've got this 3-built unit mounted here on the firewall, nice and clean, tidy, out of the way. This Birch unit is not going to work that way. As you can see, it looks like it's designed to hang, an underhung mounting system. So it would work really good if you wanted it up under the dash like an old AudioVox EQ or something. However, my dash is not set up like that. If you peek over to the corner, you can see it's just like 16 gauge aluminum angle makes the finish of my dash, and I don't want to hang this big old unit off of there. So I think what I'm going to have to do is evict another component out of the dash that's, somewhere where I can reach this box while I'm strapped in tight in the seat. So we'll take a look at that next. So what we've got here right in the center of the dash is this really nice ECU Master display setup. Now my wife and my dad bought this thing for me for my birthday for this truck. And when I designed the dash, basically the whole functional part of this dash was designed around this display unit. And I have yet to even plug a single wire into that thing yet. It has data logging capabilities, inputs, outputs, customizable displays, you name it. It's a wicked cool piece. But I really think I'm going to steal that spot in the middle of the dash for the RII, at least for a little while. Get everything set up. If I decide later on to tackle the project of wiring this thing in and making it function the way it should function in this truck, then I'll revisit it at that point. But right now I need to get the RII in here where I can reach it and have it function and work. And I'm not really sure how much I could even look at this screen when I'm driving this truck anyway. So I think where I'm going to start is go ahead and pull the mounting screws out of the back of that unit, get it pulled out of the dash, and see if if there's even a big enough hole in the dash there to mount the RII in that location. If not, scratch that. The ECU Master can stay and keep the hole filled. Now, one last thing before we get started here. All of the wiring for the Birch unit comes down to this 8-pin Deutz plug right here. And they were nice enough to send a pigtail along with it. It's all wired. Everything in the schematic or the instructions that they send with the unit, reference these colors of wires and where they need to hook up. And it looks like they give you, that's got to be 6 inches. Yeah, definitely 6 inches of wire there. And I guess you can just tie onto that and continue on wherever you've got to go. Fortunately, I have a pretty nice selection of Deutz plugs and pins myself. As I had pointed out earlier, the 3-built unit is already wired in and it just plugs into the main truck harness. So building a jumper harness to go from this plug to the plugs under the dash really should be a very simple deal. So wiring, that's good as done. I've just got to get this box mounted somewhere somehow. It only took about 3 seconds of me trying to squeeze in between those door bars to realize there had to be an easier way to find out if this Birch unit would fit in the dash. Then I remembered I cut the dash out on Plasmacam. I should probably have a drawing of it somewhere. So we'll go in here and see if we can find a drawing. Oh, there it is. Well, as you can see, that hole in the dash there is quite a bit smaller than that screen. looks like 3 5/8 across the hole in the dash. That is way smaller than our Birch unit. Yeah, that's not going to work. Well, let's go for plan B. The bad thing is, I don't even have a plan B. I was pretty confident that it was going to work in the dash there somewhere. I haven't exactly figured out the technique of entering this thing yet either. So obviously it would have been nice right here. I can't put it on the dash anywhere. I'm already pretty well cluttered with my tachometer, my EGT gauge. Like I said, I can't hang it under the dash. That's out of reach, strapped in. I don't want to do anything in this area near my knees or legs. I wonder. I have to run the wiring down my windshield bars and below the dash, but it's not terrible. Completely reachable. Not blocking really any view to speak of. There's potential there. I might have to look into that. No. That tube has a slight bend here. It's kind of at an angle. Could probably always cover those lights up with something, dim them a bit if they were in my eyes or distracting. Over here, I don't think it would matter. It's pretty tight around the visor area for getting any kind of clamping device on this tube. Huh, what a pickle. I don't hate that. Just a matter of getting it mounted there. A couple of zip ties would do it. Well, this is many moments later. I've been sitting in here just contemplating and seeing if I can find a place to mount this box. I've come to the couple of conclusions. One, this cage is really tight with the body. I don't have any room to put any kind of real substantial clamp around this tube to mount this box up here. Kind of what I was kind of digging that. The other downside to that is this box actually protruding out back past the roll bar, the cage. You know, if you get into a bit of a tumble and smash this brow of the cab back, I'm going to feel bad enough that I dented up my cab, but it's really going to make me feel bad if I mess up this expensive box. There's really nowhere in here within reach, and I don't want to mount it on the dash anywhere, nothing like that. So unfortunately, I'm really thinking that I'm going to have to try and mount it up under here. Like I said, I didn't want to in the first place. The only thing I'm hanging on to is this extruded aluminum part. I know you guys probably can't see with that light shining up there, but Having it centered in the dash, really, I guess it looks pretty nice. It looks symmetrical. It's within reach. I can easily reach it right here next to my fuel shutoff. The only downside, really, besides hanging it on this piece of aluminum, is now I don't know where I'm going to put my trailer brake controller. I guess I'll cross that bridge when I get there. Well, I've already got the bottom of the dash marked where I need to drill the holes. Now I just have to figure out how to get back in here or actually operate this drill. There we go, mostly. Hopefully I brought everything that I need, so I don't have to make that trip more than once or twice. I didn't stab it through the bottom of my gauge. That's a plus. Reach my toolbox pocket. I'm going to go ahead and tap these holes as well. That way I don't have to fight it all the way. I can just hold the box in place, run the screws in, and then just basically use a jam nut on top of them. Perfect. That'll do. This is quite a deal. They say right in the instructions, this box is not waterproof. If it's going to be near water, it needs to be covered up. And then they go put this heat shrink on this plug that makes this whole little wire stub stiffer than the chassis that I'm bolting it to. That's very handy. I might have to see if I can get my Sawzall out and cut that thing off so I can have a little bit of flexibility. But first, before I crawl out from under here, I'm going to see if I can get the 3-bilt out, or mostly out. I could just get those out from the outside. Next. Yep, back in we go. Got that chunk of Ron Jeremy heat shrink cut off of this cord for this unit. Get wiggled back in here. I brought some screws, nuts, a couple more tools. See if I can get it fastened in here. Figure out length on wire, I'd actually considered changing this plug and just go to a plug that I could use, you know, divided up into two different harnesses right here. But I have a feeling that if a guy ever needed one of these from someone else at a show, if this box took a crap and someone had a spare in a trailer, I'll bet they all have that same plug. So I better keep that uniform, at least for now. See how this system works. Could be better. Jeez, oh Pete. It's actually pretty rigid, more than I was expecting on that little piece of aluminum there. It's pretty rigid, the aluminum itself, and it's not like there's not a lack of rivets holding it to the chassis. This fastener right here is right below the water temperature gauge. So I could actually probably use about 1/4 of an inch shorter machine screw. I've worked on a lot worse stuff. Pretty much anything Ford newer than 2014. Oh, I left that harness out on the barrel. That's convenient. I do believe I can probably just go ahead and throw some Deutz plugs on that harness that they sent with me, or sent with this box. We can make it work reasonable. I might get to use a zip tie on this thing yet. On to wiring. As you can see from the time lapse, the wiring really did turn out to be no big deal. I went ahead and used the supplied pigtail that came with the Birch unit, crimped the correct pins on each wire, and then plugged each wire into its associated plug so that that unit would actually plug into the existing harness in the truck. Fortunately, all of the circuitry basically works the same between the 3-built and the Birch. So power, ground, all of that was set up the same. Even the lane lights themselves. The lane lights with the 3-built are designed to have a supplied 12-volt power, and then the ground side is switched by the RII. And the Birch unit is also set up to operate that way, so I didn't have to change any wiring in the truck. Now, as far as the mounting in the dash, this actually turned out better than I was really expecting that it would. And I'm pretty sure I can live with that for now. At least give it a try. If I end up making changes later on, the only thing I could see, I'm trying to get a little light so you can see here without it being overbearing. Possibly I could build a better bracket. You can see this bracket, this tab for my fuel shutoff cable is actually held on with 2 bolts here. What I could do is drill out this buck rivet right here and build a new bracket that bolts on those 3 bolts and goes under the dash. I could catch all 4 bolts in the Birch and integrate a tab for my fuel shutoff cable. We'll test it as it is. If I have any issues, that will be the backup plan to correct anything, any weaknesses of that deal hanging onto that bottom lip on that dash. Now I'll take the camera around front and we'll talk about lane lights. I've already mentioned lane lights a couple of times in this video. So what are lane lights? Lane lights are just a visual indicator that the track crew and personnel can see from outside of the truck. They have a couple of functions. One, it lets those individuals know that your system is functioning. And 2, it lets them know that you are on the proper channel for the lane that you will be competing in. Typically, your lane lights are going to be a yellow light on the left side of the truck and a red light on the right side of the truck. So when you are instructed to go to the right lane, you're going to switch your RII to the right channel and you're going to get a red light that lights up on the right side of your truck. If you are racing in the left lane, you're going to switch your RII to left lane and you're going to get a yellow light on the left side of your truck. Now, as you pull up to the line, getting ready to race, prior to staging, they're going to do an RII test. So you'll pull up in the truck, you'll have your lane light on. So we'll just say, for example, you're in the right lane. You're going to pull up, your RII is going to be set to the right lane channel. You're going to have your red light indicator on the right side of your truck. When everything's good to go, you're going to show them both your hands, let them know you're ready. They're going to hit the kill switch on their end and test the system. The truck should shut down and the red light on the right side of your truck is going to shut off. When they give you the all clear, you're going to go ahead and hit that reset button. Your light's going to come back on. You'll be able to fire the truck back up and you're ready for racing. Lane lights used to be very specific in the MTRA rulebook. Obviously, yellow is for the left lane, red is for the right lane, and they even gave specific dimensions or sizes of lights. And if I remember right, they even made the suggestion of using your tachometer shift light. That seemed to be about the right size and you could get both of those lights in the colors required. Since the early days, it seems like people have used a lot of different variants for lights. I've seen everything from trailer clearance lights, which I guess are approximately the same size as a shift light if you're using a small 2-inch round clearance light. I've also seen the big long amber and red light bars. And nowadays, there's probably really no limit to what a guy could actually use. They are still very specific on yellow on the left, red on the right. So as long as you follow those rules and those lights are actually visible from outside of the truck, I'm pretty sure you're good to go with whatever you can get in there. I chose a couple of LED strips. And you can't hardly see them in the video here, but they are actually on the A-pillar on each side of the truck. And I chose that trying to keep them the least amount of visibility when not in use. So I'm going to go in there, turn the switch on. I'll have it on center lane so both lights will light up and you can actually see what it looks like with the system on. Now obviously this is in the center lane, so both lights are on. If I switch over to the left lane, my left light, the amber light, will stay on with the red light going out. So this will indicate that I am on the left lane channel, and that's what they will use to shut this truck off from their radio. Now if I switch over to the right lane, now I'm on the right lane channel. Really about the only thing left to do now is actually test this system. So this is actually the first time I've ever messed with this radio. It's got a little small display here, and as I turn the channel knob, it actually tells me what channel it's on. So right now I have it on 1 right. So if I go to the right lane, I should be able to key the mic and kill the system. There it is. Now if I reset, should be back to ready to fire it up. Now we'll go to the left lane. And test. Easy peasy. Looks like it's gonna work. Now, next time I have the truck running, I'm actually gonna do a live test and make sure that this system fully works. Works. I'll fire it back up real quick. Okay. Well, there you go. The very basics and even a little history on RII, a little bit of installation, and even a live test. Obviously, the new unit works, so I can check that little project off the list. Just a little bit ago, I was actually thumbing through the installation instructions for the 3-built unit, and I run across a little paragraph in there where they mentioned that the receiver can actually be reprogrammed to work with different transmitters. So I've sent out an email to 3-built and asked them if there is any way that that receiver that I just took out of the truck can be programmed to work with a Birch transmitter. If that is in fact the case, I think I'm going to send that unit in and get it set up so that I can actually put it back in the truck and have it for a spare unit if need be. I will admit, if it turns out that is the case, it's going to kind of suck that I spent quite a bit of money to buy a Birch unit when I could have just sent the 3-built it and get it reprogrammed. We'll see what 3-built says. I don't even know if that's really a possibility, but I figured it was worth reaching out and asking them. I think that's going to do it for this video. As always, thanks for watching. Have a good one. Wonder how much of it I got. When did my battery die? Let me out.